Well, next will be the applicant's presentation. As a reminder, commissioners should address their questions to the applicant at the time of their presentation. I yield the floor to the applicant.
Jeff Jensen, Sewell and Associates, representing the applicant. Yes. So Amy did a great job of explaining what we wanted to do. We're more or less rezoning to match existing uses at both the fairgrounds and the sheriff's office facility. We're going along fence lines. The uses are in line with the comprehensive plan, and they're in line with the existing uses out there. The rezoning is part of the replat process that will be undertaken to, again, it maybe shouldn't, to kind of clean up some of those existing uses and overlap and align them better with actual or proposed and actual property lines out there. That's kind of the goal. That's really all there is to it. There's not a lot more to explain. As you can see it, I know we're not talking about specific proposed uses in the future. This is part of the process, but it's just the rezoning of the property at this point, not what's going to happen on those pieces of property in the future. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Really. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant at this time?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Boyd.
Mr. Jensen, the proposed MUR, what are the dimensions of that piece of property? I know it's point.
Within that, like just the proposed MUR is like 0.3 acres. Isn't that what it says?
Yeah, 0.28. Are the dimensions? I mean, it's such a skinny plot. I was just curious about the size dimensions.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I think you read it.
It was in the reading. Yes, it's
in the reading.
20
I
feet
want
by
to say it's
600
like
feet.
400 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
By like 25 feet. There's an existing fence line there that kind of is attached to the sheriff's office facility and the driver license division, and it basically just follows that fence line.
Good. I have a question then following up on that. Is that fence line just kind of like a fence line of convenience? That fence line is not part of the security fence line for the current sheriff facility, or is it?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Thank you.
It's a tall fence. I don't believe it has like razor wire or anything like that on top of it.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant before we proceed with the public hearing?
Sure.
Mr. Dunkel.
You said that you believe that it falls within the current comp plan. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, as Amy presented, like it's part of the existing fairgrounds facilities. That's where like the fairgrounds is being used as existing facilities there. It would provide, man, I just lost my train of thought. Amy did a better job of explaining it than me. It provides, let's see, where it supports. So it allows parks and recreational facilities. It would promote economic development by increasing the capacity in the area of the fairgrounds. And then the mixed use residential side of it is just conforming to the existing use, more or less.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. We were sharing notes there. Thank you.
All right.
So we'll now prepare to proceed with the public hearing. Do we have Zoom participants this evening?
Mr. Chairman, I do not believe we have anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak on this matter.
Thank you. We can check in again later. If you wish to, we'll hold off on that. So as announced earlier, to those here in the chamber, if you would like to speak, you need to complete a sign up form. If you haven't done that, you can still do that. Forms are back there on the table. Give them to the staff in the back of the room. And they'll bring them up to the clerk. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. City policy provides that the presiding officer may allow time to be gifted during a public hearing, and I will allow this option this evening. Those present who wish to speak may gift your time to another speaker who is also present in the room. You may only do so once, and the maximum amount of time any single speaker will be allowed to present is 6 minutes. If you are gifted time, please state who has gifted the time to you when you approach the dais. You both must have completed a sign-up form to complete that. So we will now begin the public hearing. Madam Clerk, is there anyone signed up who would like to testify in favor of this?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have anyone signed up who would like to testify who is neutral?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Is there anyone signed up to testify who is opposed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, one moment.
Okay.
Sheriff Darrell Wheeler.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Chairman and Planning and Zoning Board. I would like an extra 3 minutes if the chair provides, and I do have Tricia Boland who has
And Trish,
signed up.
yes,
Thank you very much.
so be it.
So, Commission, I have reviewed your posted rezone application and requirement in the application, process instructions pertaining to the Sandpoint City rezone application filed by Bonner County Commissioner Luke Ahmet. Per Idaho Code 22-204, Luke Ahmet lacks statutory authority to be the exclusive applicant for the proposed land use change. In 22-204, that law requires that the county board be part of the fairgrounds related land use planning activities. Therefore, the county fair board is necessary party to this application. County property used for fairgrounds is included under property information noted on the application as parcel RS 00000036010A, which in parentheses is fairground. And in the application, it was identified as fairgrounds parcel located at 4203 North Boyer Road. Fairgrounds. The mere fact that the city's rezone application requests the fee simple owner applicant to indemnify the city for its wrong does not absolve the city from illegally processing a land use change in contravention of Idaho statute. Although the city's application requirements require the owner of record to submit a rezone application, the authority to apply must otherwise conform to the Idaho Code. The Fair Board is an independent office which independent officers and has a right and responsibility to control land uses for fair purposes. The Fair Board is a top-level controller of fair-related land uses per Idaho Code 22204, and 2204 solemnizes the County Fair Board's planning prerogatives by stating that such plans shall be filed with the Board of County Commissioners of the county. No such plans have been filed with the Bonner County BOC. In 2204 states that pertinent part duties of the county board, but board members meeting further duties, the county fair board shall be charged with the care and custody of all property belonging to the county and used for fair purposes, and shall be responsible for all monies received by it, raised by tax levy and levy for purposes, as well as receipts from its operation and fare of any money received. And it goes on. Oh, that's good. And it goes on that noted in the second paragraph, it shall be formulated in writing and filed in the office, all plans adopted by it and from time to time in connection for the conduct of business of the county fair, and also file a copy of the same with the Board of County Commissioners of the county. Again, the Bonner County Fair Board has filed no such mandatory planning documents with the Bonner County Board of Commissioners. Consequently, the city proceeding with this application would be a violation of Idaho Code 22204. Not only has the Bonner County Fair Board not affirmatively planned for this proposed land use, it has affirmatively opposed the Bonner County Commissioner's proposed campground expansion. The opposition was cited as a factor in the grant extension denial letter dated June 21st, 2023, written by Idaho Parks and Rec Director Susan Buxton, and I've included that letter in my original comments. An additional requirement noted in the proposed rezone applications requires an applicant process instruction is required letter of explanation and justification for the proposed project. In the submitted application packet by Luke Ahmet, it stated need to rezone the fairgrounds property was to expand the existing RV park spots located on the fairgrounds. In conclusion, I do not support the approval of this application of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and Luke Ahmet is acting in excessive statutory authority and illegally usurping the authority of the Bonner County Fair Board. Further, the city of Sandpoint should not be complicit in violation of Idaho law simply because it is indemnified by the county. This application for the rezone was signed by Luke Ahmet on May 23rd, 2023. The detailed letter of explanation was written by Jeff Jensen of Sewell Engineering on June 8th, 2023, and a memorandum was passed by two county commissioners to approve an application be submitted on June 16th, 2023. I have a question for the board. Was the application for the rezone accepted prior to June 16th? If so, Luke Ahmet has submitted an unauthorized application which deems it void and should cause this board to cancel the meeting and require a new application for both the Fair Board and the Board of County Commissioners as applicants to this rezone request. And in answering your question earlier, Mr. Chairman, the fence between the sheriff's office and the fairgrounds is a security fence, and it has two strands of barbed wire along the top to keep people from coming into our facility. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you, and thank you for the clarification on that point. Madam Clerk, do we have others?
We do. One moment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Cheryl Messer.
Commissioners, thank you for listening. I just want to also agree with what the sheriff has said. The application was put in for the fairgrounds campground to be down on that particular property, which in the past has been reserved for a readiness center. Idaho Code 67-6511-2A requires particular consideration to be given to any proposed zone change upon the delivery of public services by any political subdivision providing public services, including school districts within the planning jurisdiction. So some of the things that public services that are on the Justice Services Readiness Center property from which the effects of rezoning may or a CUP may be felt are driver's license, detectives unit, records building, evidence building, shop fleet building, marine division, dispatch, sheriff's office administration, K-9, search and rescue, jail, an impound yard, juvenile detention, parking for all employees and public and emergency services, vehicles, boats, etc. Then we have the possibility of the courthouse, the prosecuting attorney's office, the public defender's office that may need relocation and expansion along with all of these facilities that are already there. With that, no actual study has been made of the needs of the county justice services for the readiness center land. And as a taxpayer, I don't want to have to buy more land to provide these services. And so I just ask you to please consider those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Asia Williams.
To rush to another meeting. I just wanted to make one comment, was that what you guys are looking at is how does this plan fit into your current comp plan? And one of the things that is missing is the Fair Board's desire for this move. The Fair Board is not the applicant. The Fair Board was actually very clear with this particular project that they were not interested in this. And so that in and of itself doesn't make this fit within your comprehensive plan. The other issue is that the growth and expansion that is happening in Bonner County, which is directly impacting Sandpoint, requires the county to have an ability for expansion, which if we encumber that land with a project that is already questionable, we will not be able to meet the needs of Sandpoint residents, let alone Bonner County residents. But a key person is missing from this application, and that is the Fair Board. The applicant said that one of the ways it fit within your comp plan was it was going to provide fairground activities. Fairground clearly told the grant when it was time for an extension that they were not involved, and that is actually one of the reasons for the denial of the grant. So it is reasonable that this application be denied until such application is accompanied by the person who is required to manage that particular parcel for the use that is being pushed in. We don't need to rezone this particular parcel because there has been no application resubmitted inclusive of the fairgrounds to use this particular piece of land. So I don't want to bore you with all of the IDAPA rules that everybody has stated regarding this particular rezone, but unless the fairground is here saying we need this rezone to move forward and gives you how it fits in with the comp plan, you have us trying to force it from the Board of County Commissioners. And I don't think that that is what fits in the comprehensive plan of Sandpoint.
Thank you.
Fred Arn.
I signed up to give my 3 minutes to someone much wiser than
I don't see volunteers for that. No. Who is bold enough to? Do we have others?
Mr. Chairman, no one else has signed up to speak on this.
Okay. And has anybody on Zoom raised a hand they would like to speak?
No.
Is there anybody here in the audience who has not prior signed up but would still like an opportunity to speak? Okay. And before we close the public hearing, does the applicant care to offer any rebuttal testimony? And just a reminder, if new facts are elicited during rebuttal, then the public will be given an opportunity to comment on those new facts.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And is that acceptable? Are you considered the applicant? I'm just asking.
I
Attorney.
think the applicant is Mr. Jensen.
I'm Commissioner Ahmed.
I understand, but Mr. Jensen identified himself as the representative for the county, the applicant.
Can Commissioner Ahmed not speak then?
He can if he wants to sign up and speak and have his 3 minutes like anybody else here did. That I just want to look at the council and make sure that's acceptable.
If he is testifying only in a capacity as an individual,
As a citizen.
not as the applicant,
As a citizen, yes.
yes, that's permissible.
Okay. And after the fact, you can fill out the form so that it's public record, correct? If you haven't filled it out so far. Thank you. Okay.
Commissioners, thank you. I guess I'm speaking as a county commissioner, not the applicant. So in reference to some of the comments that were made, there was an MOU that was signed between the Fair Board and between the Board of County Commissioners of this year. And I sent it to Amy as I was sitting here listening to the comments so that could be entered. And one of the general provisions is very specific. And it is the management of other property of which are the part of the pieces in question. The county shall have exclusive authority to manage all other county-owned property in proximity to the fairground, specifically those lots upon which law enforcement resources are currently situated, which is the one where we're trying to go to RR1. And because I get to speak in 3 minutes and I'm not the applicant to introduce additional minutes, something for consideration is that right-of-way agreement that came forward of Samuelson Avenue is going to take approximately 2 acres of fairgrounds property. So the fairgrounds, as has been brought forward, and the uses in Bonner County has grown. When the county purchased that land in 1960, it was because the county the city, excuse me, did not extend the lease. In 2008, when that park was built just adjacent to Boyer, there was an MOU signed allowing the fairgrounds to utilize that for parking. And I speak also as someone who has the unique experience of not only camping in that area, but also having served in the armory that used to occur. And there have been a number of iterations throughout this. But to really bring it down to encapsulate what the Board of Commissioners' goal is to recognize that uses change, but we want to have the opportunity to utilize that ground in its existing zoning. And we're trying to clean up the lines as we prepare for the growth, looking at recreation and what uses we have moving forward. Mr. Dunkel asked in regards to the comp plan, it's in recreation. If you would have been there for Lost in the 50s, you would have seen a bunch of RVs that were camping in a nice big empty field. So the Board of Commissioners has removed encumbrances, and the Board of Commissioners is in support of this rezone project because we believe that it will best serve the county moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Mr. Jensen, as the applicant, do you have any rebuttal? Okay. And was there anything considered new information that allowed for the reopening of public comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
My counsel is telling me no, that there was not new information. So. And commissioners, any final questions for the applicant before we close the public hearing?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
and I apologize.
Mr. Simmons.
Yes, thank you. And why the request? I'm still not getting it. I apologize.
The request is so that 2.2 acres there at the
Behind the
behind the
Yeah,
fairgrounds
on the
can be
side.
transferred to the fairgrounds parcel, and fairgrounds facilities can be expanded on that.
Got it.
The proposed facilities need to be attached to that parcel. And the only way to do that is to rezone, conditional use permit, and then a replat to change the boundaries of that parcel.
So the specific intended uses for fairground expansion, the reason I was asking is multi-use residential has a much broader sort of usage,
Yes,
right? Okay.
but it's for the intent to eventually expand the fairgrounds facilities
Thank
in that corner.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Thank you, sir. Okay. The public hearing is now closed. And no new information may be provided and questions may be directed only to city staff during deliberation. So we, as a commission, will now deliberate. Anybody have comments? Commissioner Boyd, you look like you're ready to go.
I have a question for legal. I read Idaho code while Sheriff was talking 22-204. What is the legal interpretation of that in regards to this proceeding?
Commissioner Boyd, this is Zach Jones for the record, and it's our position that the 2020-204 provides that the county commissioners are the appropriate applicant in this hearing. First of all, with respect to the 2-acre parcel, that is not a parcel that's governed by the board. That's the parcel that's owned by the sheriff's department. It's a different parcel, and so for that particular parcel, the fair board that's not part of the conversation. For the 0.3-acre parcel, 2204 provides two things. First of all, it provides the fair board with exclusive management over the fair, and that's a pretty powerful provision. However, with respect to real property, it provides that the county commissioners designate real property that is supposed to be fair grounds, and that it's the prerogative of the fair board to operate under the commissioner's designation of what the fairgrounds are. So it's our position that even in that 0.3-acre parcel, which is in the fairgrounds, it's still the commissioners that should be making this application.
Thank you, Zach. That's how I read it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
So
Commissioner
can I
Grant.
just ask a clarification question there? So in essence, what you're saying is Bonner County owns the land, the fair board is a tenant. Would that be an accurate interpretation?
The fair board manages the land and the uses of the fair. And so essentially they're I don't want to break it down. They manage the fairgrounds, but as far as the real property issues, which is what we're at, which is what is going on today, it's the commissioners that operate them.
Of Bonner County.
The Bonner County Commissioners.
Got it. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions or thoughts? The only thoughts I have are, and again, trying to totally divorce any discussion from any kind of specific proposals that may have or may not have come forward yet, are this particular piece of ground. When we look at that big list of things that could be used with conditional, is it in accordance with our comprehensive plan, which that particularly is context area 3. And as we saw, it can be interpreted in more than one way. And it's kind of which of those interpretation weighs heaviest on my mind. And I'm not even entirely certain, but I do know the one thing that again, highly unlikely, but you never know, if that ownership of that property were to change hands down the road, I would not want it to be seen as a low density housing opportunity. It currently is. Well, first of all, I should mention too that these are two separate proposals that we will consider separately. We will be voting separately on these things. So when we're talking about the larger parcel, I would hate to see that go from a high density to a low density zoning in the event it ends up changing ownership down the road, because that's one of the things I think we should consider.
Mr. Chair, I agree with
Yes, Commissioner
that.
Boyd.
I agree with that to an extent, because that parcel is already RR-1, that larger parcel in pink there. So when you look at the grand scheme of things with the size, the approximate 2.2 acres, are we talking 200 acres or just 2.2 acres from MUR to RR1? I see your point, but it's such a small parcel. I don't think that would be a big impact.
Significant.
If that makes sense.
It does.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner McGrann.
Yeah, I would add that, I think that the permitted uses, provide those opportunities, and the conditional use requirements whoever does have this parcel and whoever submits an application to do a project against it will have to go through either if they use the permitted use process or if they have a conditional use, which would be an expansion of the existing fairground facilities, that they still have to go through the process of getting approved. So, there's still opportunities to review this to make sure that it's being used for the right intended use. Even by going to the RR1.
Other thoughts from commissioners?
Um,
Commissioner Duncan.
yeah, please. Context area 3, Amy. Parts of this. Many pieces of property within context area 3 in this area. In my opinion, don't look like they match up with context area 3. Is that a fair assessment?
Certainly, the county-owned parcels don't appear to meet that context area, but all the multifamily housing along Samuelson does meet the context area, providing a mix of housing.
So is this a situation where we're kind of letting the county property do its own thing because it's always been that way and it was maybe not identified specifically in the past or the current comp plan?
Right, I can't address why it wasn't touched on in that context area. Clearly, those uses were existing when that plan was in place. So it doesn't say they are allowed, it doesn't say they're not allowed, it's just silent on those uses.
One thing I would add on that too is it was interesting to note on the list of uses, it did say it had a specific date. These uses as of this date, which is when the last comp plan was adopted. I'm assuming, is that what that date is?
It predates the comprehensive plan.
Oh, okay, gotcha. But so those specific uses at that point in time are the things that it was allowing.
So would it be okay if I was to base some of my decision on the comp plan doesn't apply specifically to the use already?
I think what you need to look at is how does the zoning district address the goals and objectives and context area of the plan? We know the context area doesn't address some of the uses that exist, but does the zoning district? So for example, the MUR district is actually a commercial district. The context area says only residential uses are allowed. Rural residential is a residential district. It's just a low density residential district. So the context area could probably go either way. And that's why it's important to look at the goals and policies of the plan and which does the rezone to RR1 or MUR address better the plan. Because you have those two districts and you're not introducing a new district, you're just either increasing one or decreasing one.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Boyd.
So you're saying, Amy, to focus more on the goals than the future land use map, which, okay, if that makes sense, Commissioner Dunkel.
I wasn't paying attention, sorry.
Pointing at the comp plan above.
You passed me a note.
I was just clarifying Amy's comment about focusing more on the goals as opposed to the future land use map.
Future land use map?
Well, context area, that's the future land use map.
Okay.
As it is in the comp plan.
Thank you.
Okay.
And while you commissioners are thinking of other poignant questions, I have a question for council perhaps, or When I'm looking at the iterations of the proceedings that I have here, initially, it looked like we were going to be voting twice. Now it looks like we're voting once. Are we considering these separately or as one?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Jones on that.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
I think that the commission can present to the city council a decision on both parcels.
Independently. Thank you. Okay. So it seems like most of our discussion so far has focused on the rezone of the multiple use to residential one. Is anybody ready to make any kind, and then we can go back and discuss further the other one, but is anybody ready to make a motion on that proposal? Just asking.
On the smaller one.
No, this is on the larger one.
Okay.
Well, I'll take a motion on either one, I guess, but we've been discussing mostly the larger one. And the larger of the two parcels.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner McCran.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the rezone from MUR to R1. I move that Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and the relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, recommend approval of the requests by the Bonner County to the City Council for a zone change from mixed-use residential to rural residential 1 for a portion of property identified as tax parcel number RPS 3835001-001AA with a development agreement to be approved by the City Council that would require a platting action to correspond to the portion of the property to be rezoned in concurrence with considerations of the rezone. The recommendation is based on the findings that the proposed zone change is consistent with the comprehensive plan because it supports Recreation Goal R1, Policy E, and Recreation Goal R3, Policy B, by allowing uses such as parks and fairgrounds that provide recreational facilities and opportunities for open space for residents, and economic development, Goal 1E, Policy B, by allowing uses that support local artisans and farmers, and public services, Goal A, because the lower density allowed under RR1 would have less impact on schools, considers this the impact on the school district by allowing lower density residential. 2, the proposed RR1 zone with conditions incorporated into a development agreement regarding the need for a platting action is consistent and compatible with existing zoning and future land uses in the vicinity of the site. The rezoning is extending the current RR1 zoning, would allow uses compatible with what currently exists on the county-owned property, and would allow other uses that are also compatible with surrounding uses. Number 3, particular consideration has been given to the effects of this proposed zone change upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing public services within the planning jurisdiction, because the rezoning would allow lower density residential that would have reduced impact on the public schools, as well as potential for a school location. The rezoning would allow for the additional parks and open space, police and fire stations, public utilities, facilities, and expansion of fairground facilities. Staff has followed the notice procedures applicable to zone change contained in Idaho Code Section 67-6511 and City Code Title 9, Chapter 9.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Camp has seconded. Any discussion on the motion on the table?
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Simmons.
I'm a little hesitant to vote for it. Feels like there doesn't necessarily need to be a rush unless there's some time constraint I don't understand. In that, we look at the comprehensive plan, which is supposed to be the backstop against which we're supposed to decide this. And it was written at a time when most of that stuff wasn't even out there. So in terms of what we're basing the decision on, do we have enough information? That'd be my only question. In terms of, there is a stakeholder involved, it would be the fairground board themselves. Curious to hear what they have to say, whether that's germane or not on a rezoning issue, I think. So, that's my 2 cents.
And I guess my 2 cents to that would be is that my understanding is no, there is no time rush on this at all. And in light of that, if we were to deny this rezone, they can always reapply.
Yeah.
If we approve it, then it still will go to city council for final approval. But if it were approved now, then we've crossed that bridge and we don't have the opportunity to look at it. With that information you're asking for, if it were to be denied, that information could come to light in a future hearing.
Right.
But if we approve now, we're doing it without that information.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
And my concern about approving now is, again, I'm thinking beyond fairgrounds. I'm thinking beyond county ownership. What happens if that is not always the case? As the county grows, it's very valuable land. It might have entirely other purposes, and a new fairgrounds is situated out at the Field of Dreams. I don't know. But point being is that I would hate to see it have more restrictive zoning than what it currently does.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move to table this until we can gather more information
A second.
on just this one specific.
And
We have a motion.
There's a motion on the table.
Yeah, we have. to-
yes, so we'll have to vote on the first motion first before we could take that second.
It would need to be withdrawn.
Pardon?
The motion on the table has to be, there has to be action taken on it.
Correct,
So it
yes.
needs to be either voted on or withdrawn. And then the second motion. can be
Okay.
received.
So Commissioner McGrann, it was your motion. Would you like us to vote on it, or would you like to withdraw it in light of the other motion?
Let's vote on it.
Okay. So we will have a roll call vote then.
Yep.
If there's no further discussion. Okay, Madam Clerk,
Commissioner Hastings,
I vote no.
Commissioner Dunkle,
No,
Commissioner Camp,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes,
Commissioner McGrann,
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons,
No.
Commissioner Benner,
No.
Commissioner, Chairman Hastings, the noes have it.
Okay. Would we like to?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Do we open up discussion again? Are we in a
Well,
discussion now? that
or are we
there's
at a
no-
point where we certainly can. We could open discussion, or we can make another motion and then discuss that motion.
Yeah, I'm curious because I threw out my opinion to the board. I'm curious on other thoughts and other folks' 2 cents there.
If I could have a quick conversation to answer that question.
Yes. Keeping us focused.
You guys can proceed.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
so yeah, I would.
Commissioner
what-
Grant, just.
What additional information based off of what we know today are you looking for to be able to make a decision?
Yeah, I think about the narrowing of uses on that parcel of land in a future use case.
So I would challenge that is, are we actually narrowing the uses based off of what currently exists there? Because it gives the option to expand fairground facilities with a conditional use permit. Right, so keeping in context of what currently is happening in that location, right, it still gives it future expansion possibilities to expand fairground uses.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Boyd.
And I would just argue again with the 2.2 acres that it's, you've got that major acreage of that lot to the north of it, that it's, 2.2. Is that really going to make or break, a use for the future?
Yeah, I would add to that, Amelia, that looking at the Bonner County GIS, that there's a parcel to the direct west of the judicial center there that is 4 acres that looks fairly vacant. Looks like there's a bunch of vehicles parked on it right now. So it seems like that there is room for expansion as needed.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
would it be helpful for discussion if we pull back up the staff report that shows the allowed uses in RR1 and MUR?
I will allow the commissioners to say if they think that would be helpful. I see a few head nods, so please.
Yes.
Yes. I know I have it up here.
Here are the uses allowed in the rural residential 1. And the uses allowed in the mixed use residential.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Boyd.
So Amy, just to clarify, in RR-1, you can have home dwellings. It's just a parcel of 1 acre, I think is the
Half an acre.
half an acre.
Minimum, yeah.
Yep.
It doesn't specifically say it there, but in the MUR,
In the MUR.
in the MUR zoning, if I want a half an acre lot for my home, can I still do it?
Sorry,
If I want a half an acre lot for my home, can I still do it?
yes.
Yes, and that's why it's considered more restrictive to go the other way.
Mhm.
Anything you can do in the RR1, you could probably, most things, not any.
Chairman Hastings,
Yes, Commissioner Camp.
in this iteration of the lot size, with the setbacks, it probably wouldn't be attainable.
Yeah.
Would staff agree with that?
Well, it's the property you're looking at, or the proposed R1 on, it's a 2.2 acre site.
I'm talking about the smaller piece,
Okay.
RR1 to MUR.
Right,
But I don't think there's anything you can do it with the required setbacks.
correct.
It's 20 feet
You are
wide.
correct.
And part of my thought when I'd asked the question earlier, that right now there's a playground adjacent to it under the rezone. That playground could not expand. In the current iteration, it could. And I'm not saying that's a critical thing for us to consider, because that playground could expand in other directions, but that was.
And just back to the question of the size, remember, you're attaching that to a larger parcel. So even though it looks like a sliver of property, it's being attached to that larger property to the south.
Which gives you more options. Yeah,
Yes.
it's not an individual. Parcel.
And the point about the playground is on the RR1 parcel, which is it's a permitted use on that parcel. And it's right up against that existing fence. So unless that fence gets relocated, probably the only way that playground could get extended would be to the west or the north.
Correct. Feasibly, yeah. So at this point, the rezone of the larger parcel. Is that to get a sense, I mean, do most of us want to wait till we have more information?
Mr. Chair, to me, the point that Ben brought up, I mean, sort of makes sense, meaning if we could wave our magic wand, what information would we produce that would?
Sway your
Right.
decision.
Yeah.
And no direct answer to that. Yeah.
I do not have a direct answer to that.
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just if the motion is going to be to postpone action, we need specific direction on what information you want us to bring forward.
Correct. Does anybody want to entertain a motion again then? one way or the other, or?
But I think where I'm hung up, Mr. Chairman, I think where
Yes,
I'm hung up
Mr.
is
Dunkel.
the context area 3 in the comp plan doesn't specifically fit. And I don't like how we're kind of overlooking that because it's not correct in my opinion, because it is overlooked. So I feel like we're possibly doing two wrong things and gonna say that it's right. As far as like the proposed use for the rezone or whatever it may be, I don't really have a feeling either way on that, because I think normally this would be legal and allowable. And there's nothing that really says to me that it should not be allowed. Besides that, the comp plan doesn't really conform. It just doesn't, it's just not right. That's my only issue with it. Otherwise, I think another opinion would be that going from mixed use to rural residential 1 is a lower value property. There's less uses, and I do think it is kind of strange that the possible proposed use doesn't fit into mixed use. I feel like it should, but for some reason it doesn't. Because mixed use means mixed use, in my opinion, which I don't know. But then we have a gray area on where that proposed mixed use actually fits in with our code. So I don't know, that just feels really odd. So I don't feel really strongly one way or the other, besides the comp plan not being direct on this specific area. And I know that we don't always follow terms of the comp plan. Everybody's well aware of my issues with that. So we're totally, it's funny that it does say grid type street patterns in this area.
Which
has nothing to do with this, by the way. But but to your point, yeah, what other information could we bring up? I really don't know either. Except
Mr. Dunkel, what you are saying sounds like you have a motion, you have reasons that you would make a motion to deny. If you do not believe it meets the comprehensive plan.
I was just going to say that I will help us clarify our thinking in the form of a motion. And I don't know which way it's going to go, but we'll just see, because I would make a motion. I will make a motion that the Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, recommend denial of the request to City Council by Bonner County for a zone change from mixed use residential to the rural residential 1 for a portion of the property identified as tax parcel number RPS 383-5001-001 AA, based on the findings that the proposed zone change is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan, because the RR1 zoning district is low density, large residential lot district, and does not support land use policy A, housing goal H1 policy D, or public service goal 1 policy C. It does not support the master plan context area goal of increasing density in context area 3.
Mr. Chair, you're asking for that motion.
No, I'm making that motion. Oh, I thought I could make a motion. No?
I think that it might be cleaner if someone else were to make that motion.
Okay.
I think you can make a motion. You're not the mayor. I think that the confusion here is that the mayor typically doesn't make motions. So you have a vote on this commission, whereas the mayor doesn't have a vote unless they're a tiebreaker vote. Correct. On that grounds, I think that you can make the motion. However, in an abundance of caution, it's probably a little bit cleaner if someone else makes it.
Thank you.
On analysis and wiser counsel.
Thank you. So to keep it clean, would anybody else care to make that motion of denial for that purpose?
I want to add that we need to be specific in what it's lacking.
And
So
I was.
in the denial, we need to be specific.
I'm waiting to see if somebody else, and if not, then we need a motion in the other direction.
Yeah, Chairman. I move that the Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, recommend denial of the request to City Council by Bonner County for a zone change from mixed-use residential to rural residential 1 for the portion of property identified as tax parcel number RPS 3835001000 AA. Excuse me, 001 AA. Should I repeat that?
I think you're good,
Okay.
as in print.
As printed here, based on the findings that, 1, the proposed zone change is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan because the RR1 zoning district is a low-density, large lot residential district and does not support land use policy A, housing goal H1, policy D, or public services goal 1, policy C.
That's,
And that
Yeah.
sums it up for me.
do we have a second of that motion of denial?
Second.
Any discussion before we vote?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Boyd.
I think I would recommend a postponement rather than just a flat out denial. If there was something else that, if there was other information that other commissioners were hoping to acquire.
And we're in a discussion on the motion right now,
Yes,
so.
yes,
That meaning that we would have to vote against this motion in order for that to happen.
postponement, yes.
And we just kind of did that and no one identified any additional information that they would want. So that's why I don't see what well, two things. I don't see what the proposed postponement of a decision would make. A denial of this is not a forever thing. At some point in the future, as things change, it just would come before us and the city council again. Either way, the decision we make tonight is a recommendation to the city council. But again, as I said, if we go the zone change, then it's not coming back. If we don't do the zone change, we might see this again with more information, with more input from other involved parties. And we might decide in a different direction at that time. But I guess based upon what we have now and that nobody had any kind of specific information that they were looking for. That's why I'm thinking we kind of already went down that road and it didn't work.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
so even if we recommend denial, it still goes to city council
correct,
and they
correct.
could
And
override
they,
us,
yes,
but without any new information, right? They have to go on the same.
there would be a
hearing.
public hearing, another public hearing, but yeah. They would hold their own public hearing. Yeah.
Okay,
And other people might choose to participate in that aren't participating here this evening, but that's.
of course.
Any other discussion? Well, I'll call for the vote then and we'll see where we go. So we're voting for a motion for denial. Okay, just to clarify.
Commissioner Benner,
I vote no. Or yes, excuse me.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner McGrann,
No.
Commissioner Boyd,
No,
Commissioner Camp,
No.
Commissioner Dunkel,
Yes,
Commissioner Hastings.
Yes,
The yeses have it, Mr. Hastings.
okay, and so that was on the larger of the two parcels. So our recommendation, split vote to the city council is to deny this request. We will now move on to the rezone of a smaller parcel. Do we have new discussion on that?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Dunkel.
So is it possible to know a little more about what is happening exactly in this location right now? And then are we just cleaning up something that maybe should have been done a long time ago?
That is my understanding, is that there is a fence line that is enclosing the property to the south that is on the parcel to the north. So they're trying to include that piece with MUR and the remainder of the sheriff facilities.
So the use currently is not allowed.
It's a yard, it looks like it's encroachment into the RR1 zone, yes.
Although there's no development other than the fence on that piece of property, so there's not a non-conforming use of it per se.
There's not a structure or anything.
Right, there's no structures, I should say.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner. Grant.
Amy, do you have the zoning map for that entire area that you can pull up?
Oops. So it's this piece is currently RR1, but the fence encroaches into it. So that's the piece that they're looking to attach to the remainder of RR1 to the south, or sorry, MUR.
And to the south there, is that, I see a portion that looks white and a portion of it looks blue.
That is farther south. And that there is single family and multiple family to the south of what is known as Redoubt Center.
Yes,
The request to pull up a larger map of zoning from our GIS.
would you like to see that? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, please.
So this is the area we're looking at.
And
Oh,
you-
sorry. Wrong one.
Okay, there we go. Good.
Sorry.
We're not seeing what you're seeing.
Again, what is zoned RR1 to the north? What is zoned MUR to the south? It is a piece here of about 0.28, 0.3 acres. That is being requested to be zoned MUR from RR1. See what we're talking about?
There you go.
There you go.
This is the fence.
There we go. That's. So discussions on this one.
I hope so.
My thoughts, this one is a little bit cleaner, if you will, in that it's to try and make the zoning congruent with the current use, which on a small strip of property like this is probably not any kind of precedent setting decision.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, my comment is it's
Mr. McGran.
It's Bonner County property, both parcels are, and so, you know, eventually they gotta all work together to figure out what they're gonna do in these areas anyway, so. Yeah, I think it's an easy one to move forward with.
Any other thoughts or anybody want to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, just a question. What is
Yes.
that fence now?
It's security fence
Oh,
for
got it.
the,
Okay, that was what was
correct.
mentioned.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I move that the Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, recommend approval of the request to City Council by Bonner County for a change or zone change from rural residential -1 to mixed use residential for a portion of property identified as tax parcel number RPS 00000036601A with a development agreement to be approved by City Council that would require a platting action to correspond to the portion of property to be rezoned in concurrence with consideration of the rezone. The recommendation is based on the findings that 1, the proposed zone change is in conformance with comprehensive plan because it supports land use policy A and D and economic development goal E-3 by allowing a wide range of housing. Number 2, the proposed MUR zone with conditions incorporated into a development agreement regarding the need for a platting action is consistent and compatible with existing zoning and future land uses in the vicinity of the site. The MUR zone is consistent with the existing public safety facilities on county-owned property and residential uses across North Boyer Road. 3, particular consideration has been given to the effects of this proposed zone change upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing public services within the planning jurisdiction. The requested rezoning is a small area that will bring the existing public safety uses into conformance while having no impact on the school district. 4, staff has followed the notice procedures applicable to zone changes contained in Idaho Code 67-6511 and Sandpoint City Code Title 9, Chapter 9.
Do I have a
So
second?
moved.
We have the boot, we have the second. Madam Clerk, if you would call roll call.
Commissioner Dunkel,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Hastings.
Yes.
Commissioner Camp,
Yes.
Commissioner McGrann,
Yes.
Commissioner Benner.
Yes.
Motion passes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I would like to thank everyone who attended this evening, and with no further business before the commission, the meeting is now adjourned at 7:03 PM.
Mr.